Well, hello everybody. Good day. Thank you for joining us here at the InduSoft Web Studio Alarms webinar. We appreciate your attendance. Glad you could join us. Hopefully busy things wrapping up for the end of the year for everybody. We look forward to presenting more webinars after the first of the year. We have a schedule already set up, so please look for us, and hopefully you can attend those as well. Today we're going to cover quite a few things under alarms. We're going to cover the alarm worksheets and how those configure really tag properties associated with the tags and set those set points for those alarms. We'll cover the alarm event control object and how you can use that to filter and see the alarms that you want to see, when and where you want to see those. We'll also cover the historical aspect or the logging aspect of alarms as opposed to the real-time or online type alarms, and just where those locations are, what the format of that is. And then we'll change over to database from the proprietary logging format. We'll log actually to a Microsoft SQL Server Express database. And then we'll talk a little bit about SNMP, which is normally a networking protocol, and how you can use that within InduSoft Web Studio to send out alarms as traps to other networking devices, and we'll give you an example of that. So hopefully everybody can see me here okay. I had some keyboard problems earlier. I think I've worked through them. We'll see if we can't get things going. If you see me dancing around the screen with the mouse, it's because I can't get some windows to pop open, but I'll do my best to get things going here. Before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about who is InduSoft. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we're an HMI and Scada software company. That's all we do is software and services revolving around that software. We were established in the U.S. in '97. And the software that we have was really the first in the industry for running on Microsoft Windows CE. And a lot of the devices that supported Windows CE in the late 90s were industrial PCs, as well as handhelds and phones and PDAs. And because of that, we've kept the product very efficient and very small footprint, and we've always maintained that and continue to support Windows CE as it evolves and embedded as well. We're the first to have a web solution for HMI and Scada, and we have a patent for our database connectivity. And you'll see some of the database connectivity here with alarms. We also have certifications listed here. You can see that we're a Microsoft Gold partner. We're an ISO 9001 2008 registered firm. We've been a member of the OPC Foundation since 1998, and we also have our own drivers, over 240 drivers built into the product as well. The awards that you see listed there at the bottom, one of the more recent awards is the 2012 Engineer's Choice Award for Control Engineering Magazine. And just to let everybody know, we are up nominated for the 2013 awards as well. So if you're a subscriber to Control Engineering Magazine, we'd appreciate it if you take a look at the 3 products that we have listed there and vote for us. If you're not a subscriber, you can go to their webpage, subscribe, and then vote for us. We'd really appreciate that. So moving on to just what are alarms? Alarms are really a key component to any HMI and Scada application. Being notified of what's going on, out of range things in your process, on your machine, on your plant floor. It could be somebody doing something that they weren't supposed to do, or some chemical process running away, something that you need to be alerted of. Is a way that we can use alarms in an HMI or Scada application. We do have the ability to have online or logged or historical capabilities, and we can not only write to the database, but we can retrieve those based on any date and time as well. So we can go back in history and pull those up. The 2 different things that we're going to really focus on are the alarm worksheets, which configure the tag alarm properties or the set points, and then the alarm event control object, which is how you display the alarms, and that will display online as well as historical alarms. And that object is named the alarm event control object because it does both alarms and events, and kind of a dual purpose object. So that's if anybody ever wondered about the name, that's why it's named. So let's take a look at the different alarm types that we have. The different alarm types are a high alarm. If we start here, let's say at the high alarm, maybe the high alarm type is when something goes out of range, but it's still okay to maybe run your process or your machine. But if it goes into the high alarm type, maybe that's when you want to stop everything and bring everything to a screeching halt so nobody gets hurt or no process or material is damaged. So it's kind of like a couple level limit there, where maybe the high is out of tolerance but still okay, and then the high is really out of range. Similar on the low end, you have low and low. And then we also have the rate of change, so you can determine if the slope or if something is happening too fast. You can alarm based on that, and a deviation plus or minus from a set point. So if you have a set point from an established limit and you get above or below that, then you can also cause an alarm. So graphically, what do those look like? If we excuse me, if we were to start and the value here was to change over time, and we went below this set point here for the low alarm, we would trigger a low alarm within the system. If we went below the low alarm, then we would trigger that low alarm. And then if the slope here, the rate of change, was greater than the rate that we set up, then we would trigger a rate alarm. And if we went on through the high alarm limit, we would trigger the high alarm, and then so on and so forth with the high alarm. Also, there are deadband settings, so that let's say, for example, you had a tank level, or maybe something was sloshing around in the tank and creating waves that maybe you didn't want to alarm every time that it went up and down just a little bit, but when it got above or below a certain point, which is that dead band, then you would cause an alarm. So we have the ability to do that as well. And then also there's a set point for the deviation, and then if you go above or below a certain range for that, those set points are available to you too. So let's see how to set these up, and we're going to cover this in the alarm worksheets. And before I get started, you can have multiple alarm worksheets. You can have up to 255 different worksheets, and that allows you to categorize and segment depending on how you want to see your alarms. If you just have some simple alarms, it's a possibility that you'll put them all in just one worksheet. If you have a little bit more of an advanced system where you want to segment those alarms and create different filtering mechanisms, and maybe have hundreds if not thousands of alarms, it might be better off to group them into different worksheets. So each worksheet can have up to 32,000 rows. And we'll talk a little bit when we get going here about alarms can be active, they can be acknowledged, and they can be normalized. And you'll see here that they can be activated, and when they're red, when the alarm condition is present, they show up red. And when somebody acknowledges that, when a person acknowledges that they will change this green color. And if an alarm is normalized, which means the alarm condition itself has gone away but nobody has acknowledged it yet, then it will change to this light blue or this cyan color. So those are all setups, and we'll go ahead and take a look at how these are done here. So before we get into this, let's see if I can jump back into InduSoft Web Studio. Now, I started a brand new project before I launched the webinar, and it's basically just a brand new project. I've done nothing with it. So what I want to do now is start the Tasks tab here and go under Alarms, and I'm going to right click and insert an alarm. So this is the alarm worksheet as we just showed in the slideshow there. I can put in a description here, alarms, and maybe we'll call this afternoon webinar, and maybe we can give this a group name. Maybe you don't want to use a group name, you don't have to, but it's another way to filter these when you display them later. But maybe for the sake of this, I'll just call these tank alarms. And in here we can set up how this is used, but for the basics of this, that's all I'm going to do is put some tag names in here and assign them some limits. So the first tag that I want to put in, which I have no tags in this project yet, I'm going to put in temperature. And when I hit OK or enter, it will prompt me because I have entered a tag that does not exist in the system. So it says temperature doesn't exist. I'm going to keep it, all the defaults, I'll keep that as an integer. I'll click on OK, and I'll change this to the high limit. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put a slider on the screen and that will adjust that temperature value of that tag from 0 to 100%. In this case, maybe when it goes above 90, I will cause the high alarm limit, and then I'll cause a message called too high or too hot, and put an exclamation point in there. And I could set a priority on this. Since it's a high, maybe I don't want to stop the machine, but we'll put a priority of 1 on there. You have the ability to do 0 through 255, and the priority scheme is however you want to manage that. You can put whatever range on that you want to. I'm just going to use 1 and 2 for the sake of this example. So I'm going to put more alarm set points or more alarm limits on the temperature tag, but so I don't have to type it, I'm going to click on a cell that's off of here and then double click on this blank cell, and that will launch my object finder where I don't have to type this tag. I can just select it from the list here. This will be the high alarm, and I'll set that for 95, and maybe we'll put this one as really hot. Run, get out, leave the building. And so we have that in there. Also, we can do temperature, and again, so I don't mistype it, I'll double click here, double click on the temperature, and set this as a low alarm limit, and maybe when it's below 10, we'll get a too cold message. Now, one of the things that we can do is within this message, we can actually embed the value of the temperature. We could say, put a space there, and then in curly brackets, we could put the tag name. We'll do this temperature, and we'll put DEGF for degrees Fahrenheit, so we can see that that's in there as well. Now, I want to go back here. Since this is a high, we'll set this up as priority 2, which we'll use as filtering for our alarm event control object when we design the screen. And then this, since it's just a low alarm, we'll set that as there. Now we're going to create a couple more tags here. We'll do this for pressure as well. And pressure does not exist. We'll again leave that as an integer, and we'll set a high point on that as maybe 85. And this will be too much pressure, and we'll set that as a 1 priority. And we could set other limits for pressure as well, but for the sake of speed here, I'm going to skip over those. And I'll show you how to do a Boolean as well. Maybe we have some kind of sensor or mode or switch. In this case, I'll just make a tag called sensor, and that tag will be a Boolean. And go in here and set that up as a high, and set that as a limit of 1, and we'll say sensor is on. And we'll also make that a priority 1 as well. So there we have quite a few different set points for our alarms. We've done that all in this worksheet. By the way, you can select and copy and paste out to Excel, manage these in Excel, and then bring this back in, paste this back in if you wanted to. So there's a lot of different flexibility that you have there. We're going to come back in and address some of these other settings later on in this webinar, but for now, I'm just going to set those set points. Notice that they're at 90, 95, 10 for temperature, and then we also have 85 for pressure, and sensor, when it's turned on, it will show that as well. So bear in mind, or keep those in mind, and we will then close this and save that as worksheet number 1. And the next thing that I want to do is then create a screen with a way to show those. So I'll go here under the graphics tab, right click on screens, and then click insert. And I'm just going to leave everything as default. If you have different screens or menuings, you might want to change the size or location of those screens. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is put the alarm event control object on the screen. And again, it's so named because it shows both alarms and events. And if you were to go here under the global tab and configure in the event logger the events, then that object could show both alarms and events, or either or of those. So I'm going to put that object on the screen. I'm going to give myself some space where I could see those. And then I have to have a way to adjust the temperature and the pressure and set that value for this sensor. So I'm going to go here and pull from our symbol library a couple of sliders here. And in this one, I'm going to use the tag name called temperature, which I can again just pull from this list if I double click. And one of the nice things about InduSoft Web Studio, if you didn't know this, I don't have to keep opening and closing the properties box. I can take this this while I have this object properties open, and I'm just going to hold down the control key and drag a copy of it here. That makes for a very speedy way to copy that. Then I'm just going to go in here and change this to pressure. And so now you can see that I have one of these set as temperature, one of these set as pressure, and I did not have to close that properties box, so that kept that open and kept that efficient. The next thing I'm going to do is put a button here that will allow me to change that value for that sensor. So I'm going to say sensor, and what I'll do is make that a command, change this to a toggle tag, and I'll choose that sensor tag here. That will allow me to toggle that and see that as an alarm when it turns on. But what I want to do is just to show you another way here. I'm going to go back to the button, and I want to see what the value of this tag is. So what I can do is here in curly brackets, I can put the tag name inside of the curly brackets, and it will show me the value of that during runtime. I could actually put an if statement in there, use some InduSoft scripting language, put an if statement in there, and let me show the word on or off in there as well. Or to be honest, what I probably should have done is use the push button object, which could let me put the text on there directly and show values on there as well. So, okay, so I have the alarm event control object, and I have my set points for my alarms. Let's go ahead and run this. But before we get running, one of the things I wanted to point out is, by default, the alarm event control object shows all the alarms in the system. And if you want to filter which alarms you see and only show some alarms in this object, then you would be able to filter those. And we'll go into that filtering mechanism, but if you're paying attention, I did not make any configuration change to this object. So by default, it's going to show everything as is from all the alarms in the system. So I can save this screen, and I'm going to save this just for now as main. And I have to do one more thing here to make sure this is startup. I'm going to right click here and say set as startup. That will allow this to start up when this screen when I launch my runtime. And here I go. And so now the very first thing that I get is the temperature is too cold because it's at 0 degrees. It's below. Notice that tag shows the value there, and it's below that 10 where my low set point was. When I raise it above the 10, the alarm itself changes to a light blue color, cyan, and this is what's called normalized, where the alarm condition itself has gone away and nobody has acknowledged it yet. This still says that I need to acknowledge this. If at this point I acknowledge it by double clicking with my mouse, there are several other ways to do this, but I'm going to double click with my mouse, then the alarm goes away because the alarm condition is no longer present and it was acknowledged. If I raise this up above the 90 value, but not yet to the 95, then I'm going to get the too hot, which is the high limit value. And if I go up above the 95, then I'll get the really hot run alarm, which is the alarm, the high alarm. And if I was to take this below into the normalized range, you'll see both of those show in the normalized color, and then I can drag that below the 10 and get the too cold, or the low limit. Same thing with the pressure. If I grab this slider, I can get the pressure, and I'll trigger the sensor alarm as well, so now I can see that. Now this is the online type alarms, and we're going to go in and we're going to show you how to filter some of these, and we'll eventually make this into historical as well. So let's talk about filtering first. Let's go back into the development environment and go on the main screen and go here under this object. Now I didn't configure this at all, so whatever was showing there was all the unfiltered alarms that I have in this system. Notice here this is alarm online. We're going to make a copy of this and change this to the historical in just a minute. But for filters, this allows me to show just the alarms that I want to see on this particular object. So I could set that to only show from 0 to 1 priority alarms, and then it would only show me the ones that are the, in this case, the high limit and the low limit, but not the high or the low. I'm going to change this back here. I could choose based on the group, the type, the state, the tag name, the message, and I'm going to show you another alternative to this. This is how you can set up what this displays in your project, and this is done at a development environment level. You can also choose how to sort these, and you can also build in a filter expression. Excuse me. So what is the filter expression? We can put in here basically some scripting that will allow us to show and decide out of any of these columns that are in this object. Let me cancel this here. And you can see here's activation time, tag name, message, so on and so forth. Let me open up the help system here and show you how we can use that filtering. So if we go into the alarms and go into the, let's see, in the header, the format of the alarm history. No, that's not where I want to see this. It's the alarm event control object. That's what I wanted to show. This will show you that here I can choose the filtering. Then the format of this is the column name, and you don't have to put square brackets around it. You only need square brackets if the column name actually has a space in it. So for like tag, let's see, what are the different things here? So for message, you would not need square brackets. For tag name and for activation time, you would need square brackets around that. Then you would need a comparison operator, like a greater than or less than or an equal to, and then the actual value inside of single quotes. It's necessary to have single quotes, not double quotes. So here's an example. Activation time is greater than August 17th of 2007 at 1500 hours. And you can see those are inside of single quotes. It's important, that, again, that those are inside of single quotes. You can also combine several conditions and build an expression with out of logic statements, and you can get quite a big flexible statement built in there, so that you can really only narrow down to the alarms that you want to see. You can also, in that field, you can put a string type tag inside of curly brackets and then change the filtering expression during runtime by editing it in a string tag, and then it will work just as well. So that's one way to filter. And I'm going to close the help system. And before we get too far off of this, what I did want to show you is when we were configuring here in the tasks under alarms, what we were really configuring is tag properties. It needs to be understood that, for example, this tag called temperature, the value of the temperature tag, I can show this in the database spy here real quick. In this case, the value is 1. Let me go back into my runtime and slide those sliders up and get something it's a little bit higher here. I'll set that up at 54. Go back into my database spy here. I can see the value of that temperature tag is 54. But these set points are actually properties of that tag. What do I mean by that? Let me go back into my help system here. Here under tags and setting the tags properties, you'll see a list of tag properties. Now how I get to each of those is the tag name itself and then a minus greater than. This is the syntax, the minus greater than and the property name. And then I have access to all these different properties that are associated with that tag. You can see the quality, the description, the timestamp. This will tell me when the tag last changed value. If you have any questions about how to use these properties, the online training that InduSoft has on the website, we've published those for free. You don't even have to register. You can get at the tags video and see just how we use these properties throughout InduSoft Web Studio. But I'm going to scroll down here a little bit further, and then we're going to come across this high limit, high limit, low. These are actually the properties that we've set in that worksheet. And notice that these are writable. I can use this syntax with this minus greater than with the property name and actually read and write or use that alarm set pointer, those alarm limits, or set those in various places throughout InduSoft Web Studio. So I could put those on a data entry object, I could put those in a button, I could put those in many different places. So I'm just going to happen to do this here in Database Spy, but you could use that exact same concept within an object as well. So for example, here I have this high limit. I'm going to close this. I'm not sure if that's going to cause me any grief if it's open, but I'm going to use temperature and then do the minus greater than, and I'll take a look at that high limit, and you can see there that it's 95. During runtime, if I wanted to change that, again, I could put a slider on the screen or data entry, a text object on the screen. But for the sake of this webinar, I'm just going to do this right here in Database Spy. And I'm going to change this to a 97. And now when I open up that worksheet, you can see that it's changed right there in that worksheet. Another place that I can see this and interact with this, I'm going to close this worksheet. And here under the Home tab, we have this tags group. And here what I'm going to do is put in temperature. Actually, instead of typing it, what I should do is show you that here in the Object Finder I can just grab it out of here. And now I can go into these properties here. And here under this tab for alarms, integer, you can see that those same things are set up here, just showing the tags properties. You can get at other information of the tag properties as well. But what we've done in that alarm worksheet has provided you a very clean interface, a very easy to use interface to configure multiple tags quickly in here. Let's see, so that's the idea of tag properties and how the worksheets configure those. Let's go back now to the alarm event control object and talk about the filtering mechanism. So here we did we looked at how to filter based on the development environment and what that object would show on this screen. Another thing that we can do here under the Advanced button, there is these runtime dialog kind of pop-up triggers. And for filters, I'll just put in a tag. I'll put a new tag called filter trigger. And this tag does not exist. I'm just going to make this a Boolean because that's all I have to do is change its value. So if it's a 0 or goes to a 1, or if it's a 1 and goes to a 0, then this will pop up. So what I'm going to do is put a button on the screen here and call this filters, and I will make this a toggle tag type, and again choose that from the list. And once that toggles, then my filter dialog will pop up during runtime. So let's see how that works. So now I have all of those alarms that I had present in the system. If I enable my filter pop-up here, you can see that now I can have those same filtering mechanisms that I had during the development environment now during runtime. Now you might not want everybody to have access to this, so you might put security on this type of button to allow only the people that you want to have access to this. Let me give you an example. I specifically chose the word too in front of each of these messages. Too much pressure, too cold, and too hot. So I could filter on those. So here in the message, if I do TOO and then asterisk, which means a wildcard, which will accept any characters after that, and then I click on OK, this object now filters just to show me just the messages that begin with the word to. I can then go ahead and remove that if I wanted to. And now what I can do is change to priority. So let's show just the priority 0 and 1 alarms. So they're the priority 0 and 1 alarms, and I'll go back and let's say maybe I want to just select the priority 2 alarms. That was the only priority 2 alarm that I set. So you can see how you can really make this flexible. I didn't mention the selection field. I'll talk about that. I'll go back into the worksheet and show you that. You can see the different types here. You can see the state, whether or not it's active, acknowledged, or normalized. You can see the groups here, so you can filter on any of those things that are really in the alarm worksheet. So let's go back into the alarm worksheet really quick here and take a look. So again, you can set all these different values up, the group names, things of that nature, as well as the priority to be able to filter on. The selection field is a 7-character alphanumeric field that you can put whatever you want into. I could call this tank 1, and maybe this sensor is associated with tank 2, and then you could filter based on the selection as well. So however you want to do it, again, it's a 7-character field and it's alphanumeric and it's free form, and it'll let you do whatever you want to. So let's see, I am at this point going to change this into historical. Now when I do this, I'm going to click on this worksheet. Now again, you can have multiple worksheets. Again, you can have up to 255 worksheets. Maybe some of those log to disk and some of those do not. It's flexible to allow you to do whatever you want to with it. So in this case, I'm going to save to disk, and now these alarms will be logged. These will be logged on my hard drive. Now, what format do they get logged into? I'm going to go to the help system here, go to alarms, and talk about the format of the alarm history. Now, these are the parameters, each thing that gets logged in the alarm log, and the format of this starts with AL, and it has the year, the month, and the day, and it ends in .alh. Now, a couple of things about this. This is the entire history for that particular day gets logged into a single file. So you have 24 hours worth of alarm information in one file. It stops and then starts a new file every day. Therefore, again, you have 24 hours worth of data of alarms in a single file when you're using this format, and that's how we know how we can go back into history. The other thing to point out is that the format of this file, which I'll show you in just a minute, each of the parameters are delimited by this character, which is this little vertical line, which is called the pipe character. It's typically found just above your enter key, above the backslash key. So that is a way that it is delimited. So very similar to a comma separated variable or CSV file. If you open this up in Excel, that you can just point it to Excel and tell it how to delimit that, and it'll show you all the data. What I did want to point out in this format is that when we're using the proprietary format, each of these parameters, these field numbers, are in order logged in this way. So you can see that there's the value when the alarm occurred, the priority number, the selection, the tag name itself, so on and so forth. So there's quite a bit of information that's logged. The first parameter is actually the file version, as we've added different types, and this needs to be updated. We're currently at version 4, and I'll show you that when we log. So the other thing to point out is that when we're switching this over to a database format, and we'll do that later on in the webinar, that these column names or field names are actually used, and what data types those are. So we'll see alarm start time, and then the message and the tag value, so on and so forth. So we'll see that in a little bit. So let's go, now that I've set this up to save to disk, we're going to log these alarms, and when I run this, what will happen is I'll cause some alarms and get some alarms in here, and put that above the value here, and now I can go into my folder where that project is, and that's here under Scada projects. That's alarm webinar, and the alarms are saved under the alarm folder, and you can see here that format that I mentioned earlier. It's AL and then the year, the month, and the date, and .alh. Now, just because it has a .alh doesn't mean you can't open it with Excel. We can open it up with Notepad, which I'll do first here. I'll just show you how this looks in a raw text format. So I'll select with Notepad, and you can see here that it's alarm type number 4. I mentioned that. There's the date, the time, the tag name, the message, and then all that other information in the particular order, the user that was logged in, the name of the PC, so on and so forth, all the way out there. Now, in this morning's webinar, we had a question, a really good question of what if I want to open that up with Excel. So what we can do is I'll just open up Excel, and I'll point to this file. And now by default, when you open a file with Excel, you're going to see that it's going to try to open up the native Excel file formats. We can open up text files, CSV files, things of that nature. In this case, I'm just going to say star.star or all files, no filtering. I'll scroll down to my Scada projects, my alarm webinar afternoon, and now I can see that alarm history file. And Excel knows when I bring that in that I had opened up Excel, and it prompted me when I opened up that file and told it to bring in the alarm history. It brought that in and then prompted me for how is this delimited. I can tell that it's delimited, and I can go to the next and say, okay, it's not tab delimited. Where's my pipe character? I can say that it uses other, and then I can type my pipe character in here, which is shift just above the backspace. And then once I've done that, it looks like everything is formatted properly. I can finish, and then it brought in that alarm history directly into Excel. So we can do that right into Excel that way. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to close this history file here. And let's see. Before I get started, I want to check on one thing. And okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to move on, and now that I have logged that to the proprietary format, I'm going to now try to change this over to the database format. So here's how we do that. First, we're going to go into our project tab here, and here under options, we're going to go in and configure the default database. Before I do this, I'm going to go out to my SQL server, and let's see, I have to stop this. I'm going to go out to my SQL configuration and create a database so that we can log to it. And let's see. So there's my database server. I'm using SQL Server Express 2005. There's a later version for 2008 that'll allow you to use up to 10 gig of space. That's available for free from Microsoft. So again, 2008 will let you go up to 10 gig for free. So I'm going to connect up to this server, and when I do this, let's see, did I click connect? I think I have to click, oh, here is my keyboard, and hit enter here. And once I connect to that database, it will then show me all the server, it'll show me all the different databases that I've created in here. I created one this morning called Alarms. I'll create a new one called Alarms 2 for this. I'll say New Database, and this will prompt me. And I'll create Alarms 2 and add that to my database. And once I've done that, you can see here, if I right click, go to tables, expand this out, I only have system tables in here. I have no tables for alarms or anything created in here. So I go ahead and minimize this at this point, and now I can connect up to that using this project. So here I'm going to configure the default database. Now, configuring the default database, it lets me set up the database that I'm going to use throughout this project. The first thing that I have to do is set up a connection string to connect to that database. And InduSoft Web Studio can build that for you. You just click on that Browse button, and then I can use any of these different providers for any of the Microsoft Office products. I might use the Jet provider or Office Access. In this case, I'm going to use the provider for SQL Server. I'm going to click on Next, and what Next does is it really walks you through these different tabs. So I'm going to click on Next. You can see here at Connection, and now I'm going to set up my connection. This will be here on my local PC, and then I'm going to put backspace and then SQL Express. We'll go to that database. I use the Windows security once I logged into that, and at this point I'm really talking to the database, and I'm going to go ahead and query the database with this drop down, or the server I should say, and choose that particular database. So I've made that request. It's responded back, and I can test the connection. The connection looks like everything is good. So there we go. Click on OK, and now I can use this connection. And now for here, for example, the alarm history and events, because events and alarms use that same object, I have to choose the same format for those, the same type of format for both of those simultaneously. So I'm going to switch that over to database. And here under the alarm database, you can see that provider that I just set up with that connection string. And it's by default, it's going to create alarm history within there. It's going to automatically create that. If I wanted to choose a different table name, I could uncheck this and choose a different table name or create my own. In this case, I'm just going to leave everything as default, show you just how simple this is. Click on OK. And now what I can do is when I run my project, my alarms are saved and the database. And so what I'll do is I'll go back into my project, I'll generate some alarms, generate some low alarms, and what I have not done is put a historical object on the screen. So let me do that before we get going here any further. Graphics, go to main screen. What I'll do is I'll just copy this object down. I'm going to hold down my control key and drag this down here, and that's all I'm going to do is change this from online to history. And once I have history in here, then it'll go ahead and pull from that database. So now I can close this screen and run it. And these are the historical alarms that are now coming from the SQL database. So let's go in and take a look at the database and see just what alarms it has in there. Let's generate that sensor alarm, and we'll jump out to the SQL database management tool here. I can go into my alarms, my tables. I can refresh this, and we can now see that we have alarms and events in here. I can open up the table, and we can see just those alarms coming in, or as they came in and have been logged. So there we go. There's our time, milliseconds, temperature, too hot, too cold, so on and so forth, all the way out. So you can see there's quite a bit of information that's logged on every alarm, out to the user that was logged in, the PC name, so on and so forth. So quite a bit of information out there. So that's how we can do logging to a SQL database, just that easy. So let's see, let's continue on here. Let's go back into the worksheet real quick. What I wanted to point out is here we can configure the colors for the active alarms, the acknowledged alarms, and the normalized alarms. So as those come in, those colors can take place. And again, you can configure these colors different for every single worksheet. But what I also wanted to point out here under the alarm event control object, you can actually change the color of the background of the object, and based on filtering you can select any color that you want to. Group with specific circumstances, you can change that to a different color yet again, so you have some flexibility. That's relatively new in InduSoft Web Studio. As I mentioned about the filters, we can also change the columns of how this displays. So here in this alarm event control object, we can see that we can add in, let's say for example, the comment. One of the things that might be necessary for if you're familiar with 21 CFR Part 11, which is a federal government, a U.S. federal government regulation to have traceability of who did what when, we can put a comment in here and add that. So now when I see the comments in here, or when I get a comment entered in the system, I can see it now in this list. Also, something to note is based on every one of these, this properties properties section changes. So if I want the comments field to be 200 pixels wide instead of 100 pixels wide, I can set that up, and so now that will go a little bit wider there. I can also set this up with keys on here, so I have a lot of different columns that I can configure. And in the same way that I did with filtering, I can choose here under Advanced and set up a column trigger, and I can pop up that columns dialog during the runtime as well. While we're here under the Advanced, I can set up tags to acknowledge, and here is the acknowledge comment. By default, it's disabled to force the user to put in a comment. I can make it optional or mandatory. Here I'm going to make it optional, and let's see some of the other things. I can get at total alarms by putting tags into these. Some of this other information you can get at. I can also print to a PDF. I can put a file name in here as a string tag, and then when I toggle this tag, it will print to a PDF or print to a printer as well. And then to navigate up and down through the alarm list, I can use my mouse cursor, but if I don't have that or a touch screen, I can put triggers in here, tags for navigation. I can put tag names in here, and every time you toggle one of those, it will do this function, either go up or down, page up or down, or all the way to the top or all the way to the end of the list as well. So those are some of the features that you have built in for the advanced. And let's see. So now that I put that requirement for acknowledge in there is just optional, when we acknowledge an alarm, it will go ahead and pop up. So let's go ahead and save this and run. And so let's say if I acknowledge an alarm, you can see now I get the ability to enter a comment that I'm just testing. And notice that comment, now that alarm went away, was showed up there for a second. I don't have the comments in here in the history field, or in the history object, so let's go and add that real quick. And if we scroll down here, and in the columns we add the comment field, or column I should say, and then we run it. That'll go ahead and pull out of the database because it's still logging to that SQL database, and we should be able to see that comment or not. Oh, I acknowledged it already, so nope. Um, anyway, you get the idea of how to see that. So let's see, what else did I want to show here? Um, oh, one other thing that I wanted to point out. Let's go back into the development environment, and here in the alarm configuration is email settings. We can send emails out of here based on alarms. So I can send emails when I get an active acknowledgement based on a time frame. In this case, it's using the built-in system clock minute to send an email every minute. So there's a lot of different ways I can send things in here. What do I want to send? Do I send the date and time? What columns do I want to send, and who do I want to send that to? And before I send this email, what I have to do is I have to configure my connection to my server. And in order to do that, one of the things that I have to do, or can do, I can do that with a built-in scripting language, or we've made this easy here in this tab here, where we can set up the server, the passwords, and all the information about the server, and this will run this configuration when you start the runtime, and it'll configure that connection to your email server, your SMTP email server. And once you've done that, then you can go ahead and send emails out of the system. Now, if you wanted to change what server you're using, you can do that with a scripting language during runtime as well. If you want some flexibility, you can use the scripting language to send the email for alarms, and you can build that message that you want to, and you can even attach PDFs to it or attach files to it as part of the email. And also related to that, a question that we had this morning is how can I send SMS text messages? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the InduSoft website, and so what I'm going to do is on the InduSoft website we have a blog article. So if you go to About Us, or even down here under the quick links, read our blog, you can then search on SMS tag messages. Or text messages, I should say. So once I've entered SMS, how do we send SMS messages to phones via an SMTP email? And the basic idea is that most of the carriers, at least in the US, and I suspect that other ones around the world do this as well, have an email address that when you send an email to that format with the phone number that you want to receive the text message, then it will receive the text message. So this is almost like a little technical note on how to do that. So feel free to go to our website, go to the blog, search for SMS, and that'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so let's see, what else did I want to cover in here? Advanced. Advanced allows you to disable this worksheet, get your information about the total alarms, the unacknowledged alarms, and how this shows up in displays, set deadband times as well. So a lot of flexibility built into alarms within InduSoft Web Studio. Before I move into the SNMP section of this, one of the things I also wanted to point out is here under graphics, when you get into the thin clients, here under the mobile access tabular, or even mobile access, which allows us to display alarms as well as some other information on cell phones and tablets, iPads and Android devices. You can also configure how that's going to display alarms on those remote devices as well. So that's another option to display alarms. So what I wanted to do now is save this, get to an application that we created a demo application here of using SNMP. Now SNMP, let me go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. The SNMP, what is it, and how can we use this within InduSoft Web Studio? SNMP stands for Simple Network Management Protocol, and it's basically a way that IT departments used for configuring network devices such as switches, servers, printers, hubs, things of that nature that support the protocol. But it's basically a messaging protocol that we can notify other devices or request from other devices some information. And one of the features of that is something called traps. And what I'm going to do now is launch this project here, which is a demo project that has set up in it some special files, and there's an application note that comes along with this, or a tech note. And what I'm going to do is I happen to be simultaneously running a tool here that is, I have off screen. Let me bring this on screen here and reduce this size so we can see this. This is a free version of an SNMP management tool. Now this might be a tool that your IT department might have on the network, and right now I'm monitoring traps, and I have this application set up to send out traps whenever I change this tag. So we can see that this tag comes, or this trap comes in. It comes in and it tells me what tag changed and the value that it changed to. I can unclick this checkbox and we'll get another trap in there, and you can see that it changed back to 0. I can also do this tag here and change this to, let's say, 12.34, and when I change that, that will go into this trap mechanism here, and I can see that. So this allows other devices on the network or other management tools to see alarms that you might not be able to see normally in a system, or it might give you an additional way to see that information remotely. So that's a way that IT or yourself management tools can see information happening in alarms as well. One other thing that I wanted to show, this is actually going to do a function, a built-in InduSoft function called an SNMP get function. It's going to actually query Windows and ask for the different processor type and what I'm running here. So I can see that this has done an SNMP get, and it's asked Windows for all this information, and Windows has responded. So let's see how that button is set up here. It's just a built-in scripting language, and it's an SNMP get. It's the IP address, which is my local IP address. It's asking for this type of query. This is an ID number. That's a Microsoft ID number. Every SNMP device or server has its own information or its own ID, and then we bring that information and we display that back in that field here. So there's where that information comes from. So that's how we can do alarms. And at this point, I think I'm going to jump back and try to get some questions answered. Let's see here. See if there's anything else that I wanted to display. Oh, before we get to the questions and answers, we do have some sample applications. We have an alarm control sample application on our website and on the DVD. And there's also a really good one that does text-to-speech. And you don't have to create the speech. It uses Microsoft's built-in text-to-speech and fires those alarms off, and you can hear somebody speaking the alarm. So that's kind of interesting. There's a good example of that. And don't forget the PC demo that's installed automatically when you install InduSoft Web Studio. You can see those that demo and certainly learn from that as well. So I'm going to jump over to the chat windows and the Q&A windows and see if I can get some of these questions answered. Let's see. Question is it possible to filter the alarm history like you did the online alarms? Let's go find out. I don't know that off the top of my head. Let's go back to my project that I had running here and go into my screen, and in the historical the question is, can you filter? It looks like you can filter in a similar fashion that you did with the online as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Can you filter both the online and the history with the same filter tag? Yeah, the question is, can I search, or can I put search or filter based on the same tag name? I could put the same tag name in here that I could put in simultaneously up in this one under filters, and that would allow me to filter on that as well. Another opportunity would be to build a filter expression here out of some equations that would allow me to do that, and then I could use that exact same expression or a slight variation as well in the other object, and allow me to filter either the same or differently. So a lot of flexibility related to that. Let's see. Another question that came in: do tag references in alarm messages hold the value from the alarm occurred, or will it change to show the tag in the current? Okay. So the question is, when I put the tag built in the alarm worksheet here, where I showed the tag value of temperature, for example, let me use the seconds clock in here, SECOND, and just so we get an understanding what this is doing. This is the built-in seconds clock in in the computer, and this tag is showing that, SECOND, and that will count from 0 to 59 based on the clock in your computer. So right now I'm at 10 seconds, 11 seconds, so that's changing every second. So let's see, what does this do when we log this alarm or see this alarm here on the screen. So let's save this and run this. And to answer this person's question, when we get the sensor alarm, we can see that it stopped on the 27 and it froze that, or it took a snapshot of what that value was. So hopefully that answers your question there. Another question, can we add Boolean status such as run, stop, on, off in lieu of 0 and 1 in the alarm field? Yeah, what you could do is build an expression using an if statement. And I'm not going to do that explicitly, but I'll give you a general idea of how you could do it, because I think I can put it here on the button as well. So let me jump back here real quick, and if I go onto the screen, and here in this button, instead of showing the 0 or the 1, what I can do inside of this curly brackets is build an if statement, and I'll say if, and then in parentheses sensor is on or true. Then what I'll do is I'll get the word on, and otherwise the false condition will be present, and I'll show the word off. And I think that's all I need with a closing parenthesis in there. So it's curly bracket if open parenthesis sensor comma on inside of quotes comma off inside of quotes with a ending parenthesis ending curly bracket. And I think you can use that same format inside of the alarm worksheet as well. And now when we run this, we should see the word on or off, so you can do that as well. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see, another question is, can the semicolon be used to send alarm emails to multiple recipients? I know that we do have some flexibility there. I don't know what you can use in the field there when you're sending the email. I don't know if it allows that. Let's take a quick look in the help system. The help is usually pretty good around this. So let's see the help for the worksheet. And the header, we'll go to the email settings, and it says yes, you can use the semicolon to separate addresses. So good news, the help system helped me out there, and it answered the question as well. Let's see, any other questions here? Is there a way to enable or disable alarms or just the alarm notifications, email, etc. during runtime? You can enable or disable the worksheet based on a worksheet basis. So if I go into here, oops, I can, let's see, is there a way here under disable field here I can enable or disable this entire worksheet all at the same time? The question is, clarification, can we do this during runtime? Yeah, you would put the tag name in here and either put a 1 or a 0 in there, which would enable or disable this during runtime. Hopefully that answers the question. Another question that came in is, what is the selection column used for? In this case, it's really just a free form field for you to populate with however you want to. It just adds another filtering option for you. So if the message wasn't enough, the type wasn't enough, the tag name wasn't enough, the group name or the number, if all of that wasn't enough, we give you 7 characters alphanumeric to allow you to filter any which way you want to. So at this point, I don't see any more questions coming in. I would like to thank everybody for attending. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you got something out of this webinar. And we would also like to encourage you to contact us if you have any other questions. The webinar slides will be posted very soon, and the video will make those available in the next few days. Also, look for a survey coming soon. You'll see that. And if you fill that out, you get a free t-shirt for attending and filling out that survey. And we really appreciate everybody doing this. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see. We really appreciate you attending. We appreciate your business, and thank you again for attending. Have a great day.